They were super nervous with me.
But he said then they got drawing with him on that short flight from Salt Lake City to Las Vegas and later sent a message thanking him for the finished piece of art. Holiday said he is also drawn with people in parks and in their homes. In the work that he does, he has designed art for Donnie and Marie, for Ridgeline High School, and the My Hometown mural that's displayed in the South Logan Walmart. Holiday says he has his wife Jennifer to thank for that.
We were going to a concert up at Utah State, and I had to drop by the Walmart store real quickly, and I was running in, and suddenly she disappeared from behind me, and I looked behind, and I'm like, what are you doing? She was like, reading a sign saying, hey, local artists, and she goes, I think you should do this. And so I had 3 days, and I actually drew the My Hometown puzzle design in 3 days.
That popular puzzle, along with Jason's other creations, can be found at the Book Table store and also at periwinkleproducts.com. KBNU time, 4:06. KBNU weather for tonight. Slight chance of a shower or thunderstorm this evening. Overnight low in the upper 50s, and then partly cloudy, then clearing tomorrow. High temperature around 90. Sunny and mid-90s on Sunday. It's been to 86. It's 85 right now at KBNU. KBNU weather brought to you by Whole Tree Care. Your trees and shrubs are growing like crazy. If they're blocking your view or posing a potential hazard, call Whole Tree Care. They trim, shape, and remove trees. Call 435-760-6587.
This is David from Roof Rescue. This past winter in Cache Valley was the worst in recent memory, reminding us of the sheer power of Mother Nature. Snow, ice dams, and record low temperatures left behind a trail of leaks, broken gutters, and damaged roofs. Let's get those issues inspected and addressed so that when next winter comes around, you can focus your attention on your family, the holidays, and winter activities instead of leaks, drips, and ice dams. Call today for your complimentary inspection at 435-999-4268 or visit us at roofrescueusa.com. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind.
KBNU News Time is 4:07. Cache Valley residents and summer citizens turned out in droves at the Ellen Eccles Theater to see Michael Ballum reprise his 2011 role as the crafty villain Fagin in the musical Oliver. The grand old man of the Utah Festival Opera and Musical Theater responded with another of his trademark, incomparable performances in the flawless debut production on Thursday. As the title character, young Ross Clemens was up to the singing and acting challenges of the crucial role that has doomed many productions of the Lionel Bart musical. The orchestra for Oliver was directed by Karen Keltner, the resident conductor of the San Diego Opera. The performances will be staged, with other performances for Oliver scheduled for July 11th, 17th, 28th, and August 5th. Matinee performances July 13th, 19th, 22nd, and 31st. All performances staged in the Ellen Eccles Theater in downtown Logan. A record winter and a cool, wet spring led to the kind of late-season greenery not normally seen in Utah. Outdoor enthusiasts have told KUTV they've never seen it this green in Utah's mountains this late. But as mid-July approaches, the typical hot summer temperatures Utahns are used to are about to make a return. That worries wildfire forecasters as they try to determine what the fire season will look like. Basil Newmer Heisey of Great Basin Predictive Services said things are really going to start to dry out and turn brown in the next couple of weeks. Summer monsoonal moisture can often help tame wildfire season in Utah, but this year the monsoon is nearly a month late. KBNU News Time is 4:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
News Talk KVNU.
If you're near retirement or thinking about retiring, you probably have questions. How do you make your savings last? How much should you take out and when? You're ready for retirement, but are your finances? Your Edward Jones financial advisor can help you build a strategy to help your finances keep up with your long-term needs. You've done what it takes to get there. Now it's time to make the most of retirement. Call one of the 7 Edward Jones branch locations in Cache Valley or go to edwardjones.com. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
The results are in for the 2023 Best of Northern Utah contest.
Best of Northern Utah.
Pick up your free copy of the Winners Magazine. Go to bestofnorthernutah.com to find magazine pickup locations. Nearly 700,000 votes were cast to determine gold and silver winners. Help us recognize these businesses and let's support all of our local businesses by shopping local. Thank you for participating in the 2023 Best of Northern Utah contest.
Best of Northern Utah.
There's a place to share gossip about the office party fun, and a place to share the story you tell everyone. There's a place to share a laugh about when things went wrong, and a place to share the video of you dancing to your song. There's a place to share spare change, lunch, and your time. But we could all be better at sharing how we're feeling inside. 76% of employees have struggled with at least one issue that affected their mental health. When you share, you're not alone.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cache Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have two guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 a.m. at 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It is Friday, June 7th, July 7th. Not June. I'm Jason.
I kind of wish it was June again.
I'm Jason Williams. He's Bill Walter. Andy Morgan joining us later on in the show for the For the People movie show. Insidious fans, a new installment in that franchise opened here in Cache Valley this week, and some other stuff. We've still got some catching up to do as well. We'll talk about the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny box office, how it did in its first official week, and what it means for the future of a potential extension of the franchise, a la James Bond, with someone else playing Indy or going back in time and doing a young Indy with a younger actor. A lot of different options for franchise owners and the production companies behind the movies. It's fair to say they have basically signaled they will be doing something. Not the last we've heard of Indiana Jones, but the last of Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones for sure. And I'll spoil this just a little bit. It's doing very well in the box office. Much better than the last installment, the Crystal Skull, in its first week. And so far, the reviews are... people are pretty excited about sending this Indiana Jones out this way. So we had a listener ask about this, and I'd been holding off on any announcements until we'd really kind of nailed things down. But I've been in conversations this week with Teresa Harris at Logan City and a few of the candidates, and folks wanted to know there will be a primary for municipal races in Logan City and I believe one other. I can't remember which right now, but this is official. So a few candidates have dropped out, but in the case of Logan City, I think 9 need to be wheedled down to 6. And so there will be a primary playing out on September 5th for Logan City residents. And a couple of listeners have asked if we have plans to do a town hall style event at Logan City Hall like we've done in the past, working with Teresa and others at the city to organize and plan it. To be honest with you, Teresa Harris does most of the work when we do these. I just show up with the questions from our listeners and ask them into a microphone as we do the live broadcast. It's pretty easy for me. And I feel bad because oftentimes I get all the credit. But we are not going to do a primary town hall style event. But talking with Teresa yesterday and the day before, we will be doing, once the primary comes and goes and the 9 are wheedled down to, whittled. I don't know why I keep saying wheedled. Whittled down to 6.
Must be because of where you grew up in the valley. I don't know.
Is wheedled even a word?
I don't know.
It's Friday. It's been a long, long week. Once the 9 are whittled down to 6, then we will plan a town hall style event where people can come in person. And of course, as we traditionally do these, you can show up in person, ask questions there by handing me a card, which they always have sitting out with pens for the audience. And then also the week before, we'll be asking our listeners to submit questions. And we'll group the like questions together and make sure that it's a very interesting event. And that will be roughly sometime in October. So, of course, Election Day has been pushed back. Remember that. So tradition, I think everyone assumes this, the election plays out on the first available Tuesday in November. So the original date was November 7th, but lawmakers in a special session a couple of weeks ago pushed it back to the 21st, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Great timing for everyone, huh? Sure, that makes everybody happy. They did this for political reasons. A lot of pressure from the National Republican Party on state lawmakers to make a special election to replace Congressman Stewart this year. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has a majority, but he doesn't have a seat to spare. And so Utah law, that written as is before the special session at least, and it will default back to this after this year, by the way. That's included in the legislation they passed a few weeks ago. But it requires 90-day pauses between primaries, general elections, filing dates. So filing date, 90 days, primary, 90 days, general election. That was the law. And that wasn't going to work because of the timing of Congressman Stewart's announcement that he was going to step down in September. It didn't allow for 90 days from filing date. In fact, filing date had already come and gone when he made it official. And so they changed the law for this year to move Election Day to allow for that 90-day period between primaries, filing date, primary, and general election. And so they moved the primary date back to September 5th instead of the end of August, and they moved the election date, official general election date, from November 7th to November 21st, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So what that means is we've got some extra time to do these town halls and to get everybody a chance to ask questions and meet the candidates. And, of course, we're going to try a bit. Since we have until September 5th, we are going to get the candidates into the studio and on the show before there is an official whittling down. I got it right that time, from the 9 to 6. So we'll give you a chance to meet all 9 candidates for Logan City. We'll also try to get to the candidates in all the other municipal races happening around here. And for our listeners, of course, you get special treatment here in the Valley. That's one of the perks of listening to the show. If you have a particular race you'd like us to focus on first, or a particular set of candidates you'd like us to focus on first, let me know. Shoot me an email at kvnuftp@gmail.com. You're also welcome to call in. More reliable to shoot me an email for something like this, because then I will remember. But you're always welcome to call, and we'll get the candidates here into the studio before the primary date, and then we'll do it again before the general election. But yeah, there will be at least one in-person town hall that we'll be a part of sometime likely in October after the primary comes and goes, but weeks before the general election on November 21st, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Should also throw this out. Before the primary, the Cache chapter of the League of Women Voters is doing a candidate night. That is August 29th, so a week before the September 5th primary, roughly. The Cache Valley chapter of the League of Women Voters will be hosting a candidate night, a similar style to what we'll do in October for the general, where candidates will be on hand and you can show up and just talk to them, ask your questions and things like that. And then I have no details on this whatsoever, but another question from a listener on the Vote 411 guide that gets sent out, if there's going to be time to, because this is all happening with this special election and the moving of the dates. It's kind of screwed everything up. As far as I know, that guide will still be put together. The League of Women Voters, I think, contributes to that as well. And that will be out sometime as well. So if you rely on that to get to know the candidates or to find their contact information and more. One thing to do if you're unsure of who the candidates are, at this point, most cities have this information up either on their website or a Facebook page or something that you can look at or even pick up and take with you at City Hall at this point. So I'm cutting them some slack. Normally, if they didn't at this point, I would say, what? But where things have been kind of hectic with the legislature meddling to move the election date and things like that, to make sure a special election to replace Stewart happened this year instead of next spring, everybody kind of had to sit on their thumbs for a while and wait to see what the legislature did. And it took 2 weeks for them to call the special session. And so it's been kind of a mess, to be honest with you. But as far as I know, those voter guides will still be out, as is tradition in a municipal election year, just maybe a little later than everybody expects. So there you have it, everything you know for the election. Some new research we'll be talking about later on this hour. It relates to laws passed by the state of Utah, which are in the news again today. Both the people suing the state and the people representing the state have asked for two different lawsuits to be tossed from court for a various set of reasons. We'll talk about what those are and what the likelihood of the state getting its request granted by a judge and more, and also how Montana plays into this. Montana took a step a bit further than the state of Utah and outright banned the use of one particular social media platform. That also trickled a bit further through the courts this week. So a lot of news related to social media and the future of the law here in Utah when it comes to especially minors in social media, minors and access to pornographic websites and content online, and the steps can be taken to protect kids in both those scenarios. Both sets of bills headed through the courts, and some news on both fronts this week. So we'll get to that right after this.
Dr. Josh Red, chiropractic physician, explains how Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
A lot of our patients end up having autoimmune conditions. This is where their immune system, rather than attacking bacteria, a virus, or other bad things, it starts to attack their own tissue. This can cause so many different issues and symptoms throughout the whole body. The biggest thing for us at Red River is to identify what's causing the autoimmune response to flare up. This could be intestinal problems, blood sugar imbalances, cortisol defects, hormonal imbalances, along with something as simple as dietary triggers and environmental triggers. One of the most common causes, too, when you have an autoimmune condition is you'll have inflammation throughout the whole body. Not every patient will have the same imbalances or the same triggers, and so we have to customize a very personalized treatment plan in order for these patients to feel better.
Schedule your appointment today at 855-55-RIVER. Red River Health and Wellness with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Call Red River today.
Coming up on the Monday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, the governor of Florida and presidential candidate Ron DeSantis will be with us. A lot of things, obviously, to talk to him about. We'll also be joined by Riley Gaines, that NCAA champion swimmer and outspoken advocate for women's rights in sports. She has a big announcement to make. Plus, we'll talk about all the news of the day on Clay and Buck.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM at 610 AM.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Two different bills passed during the most recent legislative session, which was earlier this year from mid-January to mid-March. And both bills, the lawmakers knew this when they passed them, that this would happen. A little aside on this. Sometimes this is part of the process. I mean, in a perfect world, we wouldn't pass laws that then require taxpayer money to be spent to defend the state in court. But there are times when a state, not just Utah, might want to do that on purpose to push a little bit, to challenge status quo or conventional wisdom and get a ruling from a judge or even, in some cases, the Supreme Court. This happened with same-sex marriage, for example. States pushed on that, Utah included, and they got their answer from the Supreme Court, and same-sex marriage is now legal in the United States, making two different long-standing Utah laws unconstitutional and moot. They had to be removed from the books. Other times, states, including Utah, have sued, and it's led to a change, even at the federal level, where something's been done differently going forward because a state passed a law that brought a lawsuit, and it trickled its way up through the courts, and then if the Supreme Court weighed in, it's the final word. Other times, circuit courts have weighed in, and it's not been pressed beyond that, so that becomes the final word. But the courts have said, no, the state has a point. We should do this differently. So it's part of the process at times. Although I do agree with critics of Utah legislators, they seem to be a bit trigger happy with this thing of late. And by of late, I mean the last 10 or 15 years. And it is a significant amount of taxpayer money that has been spent on this. Now, I wouldn't call every time this has happened frivolous by any means. Trying to extract whether I personally agree or disagree with where they're headed with a certain law. There are still some cases where I personally vehemently disagree with state lawmakers on what they did in the legislative session on a certain issue. But I can see where they're coming from, and I can see why they did it, and I can see why they felt it was important, even though they knew it would draw a lawsuit and they head into the court system. There have been other times where I just wish they would have said no to the crusading lawmaker that basically convinced them all to go along with whatever said lawmaker's agenda was, because Representative Ken Ivory is a good example. Close to $2 million. Actually, I think it was closer to $3 million maybe. In taxpayer monies was spent fighting a legal battle that Representative Ken Ivory convinced all of his colleagues had a future, even though legislative attorneys, their own legal advisors, were telling them, folks, this is DOA. This has been decided by the courts again and again and again, and it's not going to be decided differently this time. And they were right. And it cost us, $2.4 million in taxpayer money spent to get the same answer that we'd gotten before and that other states had gotten before 14 different times in the last 30 years. There are times when I think they didn't use their noggins. But these two specifically, I can see what they're doing and why they're doing it. So the reason these are in the headlines this week, nothing's been decided. These aren't, the saga on these two pieces of legislation hasn't come to an end. But there was some movement in the court. And so that was the news this week. Some background on what these two bills are. The first is the porn bill, basically. And what it says, it's pretty simple. It's now other states have tried this and gone about it in a different way and had better luck. And so I think lawmakers made a mistake in one way. We'll get to that in a bit. But the goal here is it's just acknowledging that websites who legally, by the way, sell subscriptions or distribute pornography online, again, legally, they have a responsibility to make sure minors aren't seeing it. There isn't a state in the land that doesn't have that rule on the books. It's also, there's also federal rules along these lines. So no one's disagreeing on that whatsoever. But what Utah is trying to say with a bill passed back in February is they're not doing it well. They're not verifying age well. Now, how Utah went about it, you can have a huge debate over, and should, because I think they chose the worst option. Louisiana, for example. Now they're in a bit of a quagmire because the governor hasn't done what the legislation tasked the governor with doing, and so they're in a different kind of lawsuit. But in Louisiana, they passed this very same bill, which basically said in the state of Utah, the distributors, purveyors of pornography online, subscription services or what have you, they must verify the age of the subscribers. And then the state, through digital IDs and other things, created a verification process. In Utah, we didn't do that. The bill passed here in Utah just said, you figure it out, you online companies. And that opened the door for this lawsuit. And the state is asking a judge to toss the lawsuit That's not likely to happen. The state's argument would be great if the state had created its own age verification system like Louisiana plans to do. We didn't. So they're not going to get their wish. This will move its way through the court, and unfortunately, I think the state is going to lose on this one. So we didn't do it the right way, and then we're back to square one at taxpayer expense. Asking the website, the distributors, these companies, private companies, to make an age verification system was a horrible idea from the start. It actually puts children at risk of identity theft because who knows where they're storing the documents that would be uploaded, copies of driver's licenses and such. The state should have just done it themselves, and it wouldn't even be in court still. Frustrating. Such a good idea that's just going to belly up now. We'll be back and talk about the second piece of legislation with some movement in court this week as well, the social media bills, right after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 4:30, and the news is brought to you by U&I Furniture. At Utah State University, the Utah Women and Leadership Project, UWLP, exists to strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women. But when WalletHub, a personal finance website, ranks Utah the worst state for women's equality, UWLP stands ready with solutions. While Utah's leaders call their state the best managed in America, WalletHub describes Utah's disparity when it comes to income levels and share of executive positions for women. For the past 8 years, they also rank Utah 48th of 50 in workplace environment for women. Last year, as part of the Inspire in Utah campaign to support women in the workplace, UWLP partnered with the Utah Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity to launch a one-year initiative, 100 companies that champion women. For the report, researchers noted family-friendly practices of these organizations, including flexible work hours, remote work, pay equity efforts, and efforts to diversify managers and leaders at mid to senior levels, in addition to paid family leave. According to Susan Madsen, the founding director of Utah Women and Leadership Project, there is a direct link between implementing these types of strategies and the retention and advancement of women. She said it's important for businesses in Utah to increase the representation of women in companies, which ensures more women and their families can thrive. A new scam circling around Tooele County attempts to trick property owners into thinking they owe tens of thousands of dollars. It's all based on a fake letter that appears to look professional, which is why the State Tax Commission is concerned. Jason Gardner with the Utah State Tax Commission said this was the first one he has seen, so that's what's raised eyebrows a little bit, because normally property tax is not one that scammers really go after. The letter sent June 23rd claims there's a judgment filed to the person who received it for unpaid taxes. It includes the estimated penalty and interest costs and says they owe over $46,000. There are a few typos sprinkled in the letter, along with the wrong logo, a fake Tooele County notice number, and a phone number. Darren Houghton, the program director with the Division of Aging and Adult Services, said that's when you've got to start asking questions, because if it comes from out of nowhere, chances are there's something not legit about it. And U.S. senators from Idaho and New Mexico are making another push to expand the federal government's compensation program for people exposed to radiation from uranium mining and nuclear testing carried out during the Cold War. Downwinders who lived near the site where the world's first atomic bomb was tested in the summer of 1945 as part of the top-secret Manhattan Project would be added among those added to the list. Democrat Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico and Republican Mike Crapo of Idaho have reintroduced the bill in the Senate. A similar bill is pending in the U.S. House, with supporters saying the clock is ticking as more people are diagnosed with cancers they say are connected to exposure. KBNU News Time is 4:34.
Are you a hot sleeper? Warm summer nights can make it hard to sleep. UNI Furniture recommends sleeping cooler with a gel memory foam mattress. UNI features a copper-infused gel memory foam that helps with coolness and circulation. It moves better with you, giving you the best night's sleep. UNI is also the home of Chair Heaven. There's a reason they sell so many chairs, including recliners. For over 90 years, there's always been a better buy at UNI Furniture, downtown Logan.
President Biden's attack on junk fees now focuses on short-term health insurance plans.
All of you out there, I just want you to know, I get it, we get it. We have your back, and we're never going to stop fighting for you, and I promise you that.
He says they can leave consumers saddled with thousands of dollars in extra medical expenses. A U.S. military aid package will soon be headed to Ukraine, and this time it includes cluster munitions, which have been linked to civilian casualties in some countries.
By providing Ukraine with DPICM artillery ammunition, we will ensure that the Ukrainian military has sufficient artillery ammunition for many months to come.
Pentagon spokesman Brigadier General Patrick Ryder. 90 life sentences for Patrick Crusius, the gunman in the 2019 Walmart shooting in El Paso, Texas, was sentenced today on federal hate crime and weapons charges. The DA says that it will still seek the death penalty when it comes to trying him on state charges. We reached another unofficial heat record this week. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
KBNU weather for tonight. Becoming mostly cloudy, slight chance of showers and thunderstorms this evening, low in the mid-50s, and then partly cloudy to start the day, then clearing skies throughout the day tomorrow, and high temperature around 90. Sunny, lower 90s on Sunday, sunny and mid-90s on Monday with southwest winds 10 to 20 miles per hour in the afternoon. It's been to 86. It's 85 right now at KBNU. KBNU weather brought to you by Roof Rescue. Their licensed and insured professionals use state-of-the-art technologies and products for all their repair and installation projects. Call 435-999-4268. You can always get more news at CashValleyDaily.com. Let's check Wall Street now with Edward Jones.
This is Senior Branch Office Administrator Monique Benson bringing you the daily financial market report on behalf of financial advisor Daryl Arnell and Edward Jones. Expectations for upcoming moves from the Fed remain firmly behind the wheel, with the release of the June jobs report driving the action on Friday. Equities closed mostly lower on the day, interpreting hiring and wage growth figures as sufficiently strong to suggest the Fed will return to rate hikes in the coming months, but not so strong that monetary policymakers have to dramatically shift course as they seek to balance a healthy economy while driving inflation lower. Today's equity markets closed lower. The Dow was down 187 points at 33,735. The Nasdaq closed down 18 points at 13,661. And the S&P 500 closed down 13 points at 4,399. In the bond markets, 10-year Treasury yields were trading at 4.06%. In stocks of local interest, Home Depot was up 79 cents to $302.81. Lowe's Companies was up 52 cents to $221.94. Nucor was up $1.83 to $161.95. Thermo Fisher was down $3.59 to $513.73, and Northrop Grumman was down $3.53 to $452.45. In the commodity markets, the price of crude oil was up $1.89 at $73.69, and the spot price of gold was up $16 to $1,931.40. This has been today's financial market report brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC, and financial advisor Daryl Arnell, serving individual investors with personalized attention with offices in Providence, Logan, and Smithfield.
Hi, this is Chris Wilson at Wilson Motor Company. It's that time of year to celebrate our 80th anniversary with our biggest sales event of the year. We have reduced prices on over 300 Ford, Lincoln, Nissan, and pre-owned vehicles. including over 50 F-150s in stock and coming. We have rebates as high as $3,000 and interest rates as low as 0% for 60 months. Check out our inventory online at wilsonmotor.com.
Wilson Motor Company, we make car buying easy.
When it comes to home care, it's important to know you have a choice. If you or a loved one is in need of hospice or home health services, remember that Primrose Home Care and Hospice believes in treating the patient as well as the problem. We work directly with you and your doctor to create a health plan that's catered to your needs. Our team is devoted to providing options in the freedom and safety of your own home. Visit us at primrosecare.com or call to schedule a free consultation. Primrose Home Care and Hospice, your local hospice and home health provider since 2006.
Rats. No, wait. We'll get to the rats. Really quick, I just want to set this up before the end of the hour here. We'll give you an update, some news in the courts again about, as I was discussing before the news, there one law, the age verification law that says to sites and companies that sell subscriptions or distribute pornography online, you must come up with a system to verify the age of the user. That's a state law. Louisiana passed one that's similar, but they said, we'll make the system and then force you to comply to it. Theirs is probably going to survive. Utah's won't. And it's because Utah was lazy. Lawmakers, instead of saying in the legislation, we'll create and maintain a safe age verification system for online services, like Louisiana did, they instead said, y'all figure it out, which is a huge risk, ironically, for children. Because that means people will have to upload their, for adults, because the people have to upload here in Utah a copy of their driver's license, and we've seen these companies are so responsible with our data, right? So Utah's will go down because of that. There's a similar bill, though, with a similar lawsuit and a similar age verification requirement regarding social media that also is trickling through the courts. And this week, we got some movement on that with a request from the state that kind of surprised everybody. We'll talk about that coming up. First, though, I've been wanting to get to this for a long time because I've caught wind of the research, and it's intriguing how they're doing it. But there's a lot of debate over this recently. The FDA is considering rules that would ban any form of flavored cigarette or tobacco, including menthol cigarettes, which have been around, for decades. And this is all to try and target, things that might appeal to younger people, to teens. Now, I don't know if the FDA is going to go that route or not, but this is all part of an ongoing effort to deal with a new public health crisis. Not new, really. It's been 10 years or so, but the popularity of vaping has raised concerns similar to those with tobacco use in general in previous decades. And there's a lot of hope that having more ammunition, more research, will better inform public policy and better protect kids. Well, some of that research is happening right in our own backyard at Utah State University, and that's where the rats come in. Oh, and Craig Hislop. Here's Craig.
Well, thank you, Jason. A Utah State University psychology professor, Amy Odom, is researching ways to address adolescent nicotine usage by studying nicotine addiction in rats. Dr. Odom joins us. And Amy, among all the world's creatures, why are rats the best to help you understand nicotine addiction among youth?
Yes, thank you for having me on. So it turns out that rats actually share a lot of common neurobiology with people. So a lot of their brain structures and neurons, those systems are really similar to what we have in people. And so something that's pretty basic, like addiction, which has a strong biological and genetic component, we're able to tap into those common systems. And rats are used a lot. And so also there are a lot of people who are studying rats just because they are such a good model for addiction.
Have you done some of these research projects on rats before?
Yes, I've been working with rats off and on for probably over 30 years at this point. So, and it turns out rats really enjoy a lot of the same substances that people can end up having problems with. So they like to take nicotine, they like to drink alcohol. We recently did a pilot study in my lab looking at energy drink consumption in rats, and they love energy drinks. So pretty much, whatever substances people can get into trouble with, rats will completely voluntarily take those substances too.
Yeah. I understand you and your team are close, or maybe already have developed this rodent electronic nicotine delivery system, the RENS. It sounds a little complicated. What is that? What is it going to do?
Yeah, we are definitely in the final stages of validating that. We've been working on it for years, and with help from engineers at USU, among other people. So basically, there's a 3D printed port. It was specially designed for us, just for the rats. And the rat sticks its head in, and there's actually a laser beam that goes across the entryway there into the port. So the rat just sticks its head in, that breaks the laser beam. And if the rat does that enough times, it has to work just a little bit for it. So do it several times so that we can kind of measure how hard the rat will work for it. But after it does that a few times, the computer turns on the e-cigarette, and that vapor gets pulled by a vacuum system into the port, and the rat can breathe it in if it wants to. If it doesn't want to breathe it in, it can just take its head out. It can not stick its nose in the port at all, so it's completely voluntary, and it doesn't go out into the experimental space where the rat is. It just stays right in that port. So if the rat doesn't want to do it, it doesn't have to. If the rat wants to do it, then it just sticks its nose right in there.
So your approach then is, if you can figure out what makes rats voluntarily, in this case, vape nicotine, it can help you prevent and maybe treat nicotine addiction in people?
Yes. So one of the things that we're really interested in, and we're just, just in the very beginning phases, but it turns out that nicotine produces changes in those reward pathways in our brains. And so that's been documented in rats as well. So the problem is there hasn't been a really good, easy way to study nicotine taking in rats because they will not smoke cigarettes, which makes sense. And so there are a lot of questions that remain, but one of them is, what are those changes in gene expression, for example, that happen when you use nicotine? And then how does that change your experience of the world around you and your vulnerability to addiction with other substances, for example? And then are there things that we can do, sort of environmental experiences that help recovery, so help those systems return back to their baseline state? Are there things that we can do, experiences or medications that might prevent nicotine from being rewarding? And then are there things that make us more vulnerable, like fruity flavors, for example, which is in a lot of vaping, biological sex. So, are men and women, do we have different risk profiles? And if so, then how can we kind of help that uniquely for men and women? And then one thing that I think is particularly really concerning is that if our brains aren't mature yet, so our brains don't actually mature until our 20s, it turns out, we know now. If our brains aren't mature yet, so if you're an adolescent, it turns out nicotine may produce permanent changes in the reward pathways in your brain. And so with a rat model, can we expose them during adolescence, let them vape when they're adolescents, see what that does, and then see, is there anything we can do to kind of reverse that harm that nicotine produces, particularly in developing organisms, so adolescents of any species, in this case rats.
Yeah. One study that was part of the material that was sent out about your research, I think it's from 2022, it indicated 2.5 million middle and high school students were into e-cigarettes, often with higher concentrations of nicotine. And obviously a year later, those numbers are probably growing. The bottom line, it appears you're aiming to protect adolescents from the dangers of vaping through what you're trying to do here.
Yes, it definitely was. It's tapered off a little bit, but it's still a serious public health crisis. We have millions of adolescents, even in middle school. There are, at one point it was 10% of middle schoolers were vaping nicotine. So, and up to, in some places, a quarter or even a third of high school students vaping nicotine. And so one of the things that is just going to be true for years to come is, we have a whole generation of people who are exposed very early to nicotine addiction. And so we can, follow our rats from adolescence through adulthood, see how it has impacted them, and then see what things we can do to help them with, for example, increased vulnerability to addiction to other drugs, for example, or maybe, attentional or behavioral issues that we might see.
Well, as the teen vaping epidemic was sweeping across the country, you were a mother of 3 teens. I'll bet that was a motivation in pursuing this research.
Absolutely. Yeah, having 3 kids at home still when all of this got started, it was just very worrying to me as a parent because of the research I do, I understand the risks. And so talking to my kids about it, but also ultimately just wanting to do something, for kids in general and parents, to help them understand the dangers. I think a lot of people felt like e-cigarettes were not as dangerous as cigarettes, and there's a lot of evidence that nicotine actually damages just nicotine. So not even the constituents of cigarettes or e-cigarettes, but just nicotine alone produces damage to the cardiovascular system. And then on top of that, you're inhaling, flavorings and vegetable glycerin, propylene glycol. That's kind of the major constituents in e-cigarettes. And we really just don't know what that does, but all the evidence we have so far suggests that if you think about it, what's in those things, it's not good for your lungs. So,
yeah, that's certainly the bottom line. You're supported in this work by a grant from the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Tell us about, there are others across the USU campus that are also involved in this, apparently.
Yes, so we're really excited. We recently got external funding from the National Institutes of Health, as you mentioned, and that was through a mechanism that's called CBRA, Cutting Edge Basic Research Award. So we were really happy to get that after years of work to get ourselves to that point. And we also have had generous funding from within USU, from the Office of Research, and that's the funding that helped us get enough data to be able to get this external grant. So Abby Benninghoff is one of the professors who's helping us with the epigenetic piece of it, and Brenna Gomer is a professor in psychology. She's helping out just with all of the data analysis, statistical techniques, experimental design, things like that.
Well, that's Dr. Amy Odom. It's fascinating research, and as you move ahead and start to put things together, we'll probably check back with you. I'm interested to see how this eventually comes out. We appreciate you taking some time to explain it all to us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And as a scientist, I want to emphasize we're very early on. So a lot of the things we talked about are, things we hope to do one day or implications or other people's research. But we're very excited to see where this will take us and the kinds of questions that we can ask.
Sure. Well, best of luck.
Okay, thank you so much.
Let's get back to Jason and to Bill now.
Thank you, Craig. And your rats. This is important research, though. It's amazing how, not that there's a timeline, but it's amazing how quickly this became a public health crisis. So research like this will better inform public policy, and that's, I think, where it can do the most good. So excited to see this completed, and we'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
What if you could come home every day to a peaceful retreat nestled in the mountains? A place that's only minutes from downtown Logan, but offers access to national forests from your own backyard, surrounded by mountains, horse riding, hiking trails, babbling brooks, and more. All this at Maple Creek Ranch, which is now in its fourth and final phase of development. 2.5-acre lots, your own piece of paradise that's remote yet accessible. And road improvements will be completed this summer. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Go to maplecreekranch.net. Maple Creek Ranch, just east of Franklin, Idaho.
Ready to experience a new level of local transit? Well, with the new CBTD app, it's super simple for you to plan your trip to a T. With our interactive map, you can view bus stops closest to your location with real-time arrival information. You can mark your favorite stops, get alerts, set reminders, and much more. So whether you're a seasoned pro or it's your first ride, get moving today with the new CBTD app.
When you buy Napa Auto Parts, you're getting the best. Pull into any one of the 5 locally owned Preston to Providence Napa Auto Parts stores. They'll not only make sure you get the right battery or wiper blades, but they'll even help you install it. And if you need other work done, they can recommend a dozen Napa Auto Care Centers with ASE certified technicians. That's Napa know-how.
It's time for the Downtown Sidewalk Sale this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Check out the sale at S.E. Needham Jewelers. Closeout merchandise is on sale for 55% off this weekend only. Over 1,000 pieces have been marked down in order to make room for new arrivals. Closeout pricing is available store-wide. Fashion jewelry, engagement rings, watches, clocks, and giftware. Special pricing on diamonds. Shop downtown. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block at the sign of the clock.
Welcome back to KVN News For the People. Study you can read about at cachevalleydaily.com that ties in nicely with some news this week. The study is yet another study, actually, that suggests social media contributes to very unhealthy sleep patterns in teens and young adults, and not just because they're on their phones. The study suggests that their sleep is disrupted even if the phone's taken away at a set curfew time, like many parents do. You can read that at cachevalleydaily.com, and it ties in with some news this week as Utah asked a judge to toss a lawsuit. Montana also doing the same thing. Montana outright banned TikTok. This was a politically trendy thing for a little while that Montana probably feels pretty dumb about right now, but they're stuck with it, and they're going to lose in court. It's going to be pricey for them to lose. Utah, on the other hand, has a bill that does a whole bunch of different things, but where the lawsuit comes in is they're asking, much like with the bill we talked about earlier in the hour, they're asking these social media companies to create a system that would verify ID and that would allow then for a curfew. Many people smartly said to lawmakers, look, parents can already do this. Maybe we should just run an education campaign to let parents know that. Lawmakers didn't listen, and they're demanding that social media companies create something that already exists. Where the lawsuit comes in, though, is requiring them to verify ID. Louisiana passed a very similar bill, but said we, the state, will create the system because we want to make sure it protects the identification of these children, because you'd have ID at 13 years old, or excuse me, you'd have a threshold at 13 years old, you'd have a threshold at 16 years old, and you'd have a threshold at 18 when a person becomes a legal adult in this country. And so they'd have to store copies of birth certificates or who knows what. And we all know they've been super responsible with our data, right? Well, a judge this week, the state had asked